I showed up early. Not to impress anyone, just because that's what I do. Be on time, be prepared. Be the good daughter, even when no one asks me to. The wind was still a little sharp that day, even though it was already April. I had my hair done. Wrapped the gift box myself, double ribbon handwritten card inside. I thought maybe this time, maybe they'd notice. La Maison was the kind of place you book months in advance. Rooftop view, glass walls, string quartet by the bar. I paid the deposit 2 months ago. Upgraded the dinner package when I got my bonus. Did all of it without asking for thanks. I just wanted a seat at the table. Not even a good one, just a seat. But when I walked in smiling like a fool, the hostess checked her screen and then looked at me like I was lost. "I'm sorry," she said. "Your name's not on the list." It hit me. Not like a punch. More like a faucet shutting off. Quiet. Cold. Final. My name wasn't on the list. But my credit card was. And through the glass wall I saw them, Mom sipping champagne. Dad talking to the server. My sister laughing like nothing was missing. No one looked toward the door, not even once. Has that ever happened to you? You give and give, but when the lights come on it's like you were never even there. Tell me your story in the comments. I'll read them all. The hostess looked uncomfortable. You know that kind of polite smile people do when they're trying to not make a scene. She had it. I said my name again, slower this time. Camille Callahan. Daughter of Franklin and Margot. It's their 50th anniversary. She nodded. Yes, I know the party, but your name's not listed on the guest reservation. I can check with my manager. I shook my head. Please. Just let me speak to someone. I'm not crashing. I paid for this. I didn't say it loud. I wasn't angry. But my voice had that edge. That kind of quiet you can't undo. The manager came out, tall, tidy beard, polite in a rehearsed way. He asked me the same thing. Name. Affiliation. Relationship. I told him. He pulled out a small tablet, tapped for a while. Then he looked up. Miss Callahan, he said, formal like a doctor delivering bad news. Your payment is confirmed. You covered the rooftop rental, upgraded the bar, even arranged for the string quartet. That's all clear. He paused. But your name isn't listed among the 26 confirmed guests. I stared at him. You're saying I'm not invited to my own parents' dinner that I paid for? He didn't say yes. But he didn't say no either. He just stood there. Silent. Professional. Like it wasn't personal. Like he wasn't watching a daughter get erased in real time. Through the glass wall the music had started. Low notes. The clinking of crystal. My mother raised a toast. My father stood to speak. Everyone clapped. They knew I was coming. I told them I would. Mom even said, just wear something classic. But now I realized something. They hadn't forgotten me, they just didn't want me seen. I looked past the manager through the clean, expensive glass. Tessa was fixing her lipstick. Reed had his arm around her. Both of them looked straight through me. Then away, like I was one of the waitstaff. Or worse. A mistake they didn't want to explain. I tightened my grip on the gift box. It had weight to it, real wood, brushed gold clasp, felt lining. It still smelled faintly of the cedar drawer I'd kept it in for months. I thought about walking in. I could have pushed past the manager. Said something loud. Demanded a moment. Made a memory no one would forget. But I didn't. I just stood there. Watching. I saw my father look toward the door. For half a second we made eye contact. He blinked once. Then turned back to the table. Picked up his wine. And that was the moment. He didn't yell, he didn't curse, he just dismissed me with the ease of someone closing a file. And then, as if it was nothing at all, he waved over a nearby staff member. A security guard came up beside me. Not rough, not rude. Just there. The manager leaned in, his voice low. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to leave. Mr. Callahan says this is a private event. I turned my head toward the room one last time. My mother saw me now. I know she did. She lifted her glass slightly like she was adjusting it. And then she smiled. Not at me. Just smiled. Like a reflex. And I realized something that stung more than the rejection. She wasn't surprised to see me standing out here. She expected it. She expected me to show up. Early, polite, gift in hand. And to quietly walk away when told I didn't belong. Because that's what I'd always done. I took a breath. Not shaky, just slow. The wind picked up. It caught the edge of my dress, brushing the silk around my legs. Somewhere behind me, a car door slammed. A couple laughed. Seattle moved on. Like it always does. I nodded at the guard. No trouble, I said. I'm leaving. He looked relieved. Even thanked me. As I walked toward the elevator, I held the gift box a little tighter. It felt heavier now. Not because of the weight, because of what it meant. This was the last thing I would ever buy for them. He called me a beggar. In front of strangers. And no one, not even my mother, flinched. They didn't need to scream at me. They didn't slam doors or say they hated me. They just made me feel unnecessary. Like if I disappeared, the household would still function. Dinner would still be made. Birthdays would still be celebrated. Just not mine. Even when I was a kid, I sort of knew. I was the one who got the best grades but drove herself home from award nights. Mom had something at the church. Dad was still on calls. I used to tell myself they forgot. That maybe I should have reminded them earlier, or that it was traffic. But the truth sat deeper than that. They just didn't see me as someone worth rearranging for. Not like Tessa. Tessa got balloons for most improved in cheer squad. Not even best, just improved. Dad filmed her pep rallies. Mom baked cookies with blue sprinkles for her comeback. When I placed first in the state math bowl, the house was quiet. I came home medal in hand, wearing the same skirt I wore to every meet. No sign on the fridge, no slice of cake. Just a note that said leftover meatloaf. Warm it up. I didn't cry. I remember that part clearly. I just heated the meatloaf. And did my calculus homework at the kitchen table while my medal sat beside my glass of milk. Reed was the baby. The boy. The prodigal son with no prodigy. He once crashed the family car into a neighbor's mailbox. Dad paid it off in cash. Mom said he's under a lot of pressure lately. I remember standing by the porch waiting for someone to ask me how I felt, or to just notice I'd been in the passenger seat. That I'd said, "Let me drive," 3 times before he sped through the stop sign. No one asked. Later that week, when I brought it up just quietly, just to say maybe Reed needed a little consequence, Dad said I was overreacting. That I had a tone. That maybe if I weren't so controlling, Reed wouldn't have felt the need to prove himself. I was 16. By 22, I bought my first car. Used Honda Civic. Stick shift, paid in full. No one offered to come to the dealership. No one asked what color I picked. By 26, I signed for a condo. Not big, not in the best part of town, but it was mine. The only text I got that day was from Mom. Not congrats, not we're proud of you. Just your father needs help with his insurance paperwork. Can you call him? That's what I became. The middle child you don't have to worry about because she'll worry for everyone else. I still remember scrolling Instagram that same night. Tessa posted a photo her and Reed clinking glasses at a wine bar. Caption celebrating the best brother ever. So lucky to have you, it was his birthday. I'd forgotten. Or maybe I'd learned not to mark the ones I wasn't invited to. Meanwhile, I sat in my new condo eating pad thai from the container, chopsticks in one hand, phone in the other. No one asked for my address. No one sent flowers. Just bill reminders. Just requests. Just links to Venmo. I started tracking everything. Not just expenses, but time. Text threads. Who asked me what? How often I checked in first. I made a spreadsheet. Called it family expense plus emotional labor. It had tabs. Grocery reimbursements, house repair loans, birthday contributions, Tessa's flat tire 2018. Reed's tuition gap 2019. Dad's outpatient bill 2021. But the tab that hurt the most was labeled calls. Received emotional check-ins. Empty. Just rows of dates. Blank cells. Years and years of blank cells. I know that sounds cold. I know people might say, well, family isn't a ledger. But when you're always the giver, when the only time your phone lights up is when someone needs a password or a payment, you start needing proof that you weren't just imagining things. That it wasn't you who failed to matter. That someone somewhere took too much and forgot to say thank you. So yeah, I tracked it, quietly. Without complaint. And that habit, that lonely, stubborn habit, became my secret weapon. Because the day I stopped paying, everything broke. Maybe I wasn't invisible. Maybe I was just too convenient to lose until I finally made myself unavailable. Camille closes her budgeting app. She scrolls to the bottom tab. Family expenses, deactivated. Then she sets her phone down beside the same gift box, still unopened, still ribbon sitting on the hallway table, like a memory she hasn't decided what to do with. And somewhere across town, her parents toast to family. To tradition. To the things that always stay the same. They don't know yet. But that's about to change. No one asks where the money comes from. They just ask why it's suddenly gone. Like it grew legs. Like kindness has an expiration date they weren't warned about. That Sunday morning, the fog outside was thick enough to blur everything. Even the skyline. Even the years. I sat at the kitchen table, half a cup of coffee going cold beside me. Laptop open, dashboard glowing. It started as a routine check. Just reconciling the la maison charges from last week. Not because I needed to, just because I couldn't stop myself anymore. The receipts were there: $3.200 for a custom dessert bar, $875 for additional floral ambiance. All from my card. All logged 2 days before the dinner I wasn't welcome to. I didn't even like chocolate fountains. They gave me hives once, but apparently I'd paid for one. And a backup. Elena, I said without raising my voice. She looked up from her tablet. Calm. Steady. I'd hired her a year ago to help with logistics. Not family drama. Can you pull the full 10-year report from the family folder? She blinked once, nodded. No formatting, she asked. No filters. Just totals. I heard her tapping. Then the low mechanical sound of the printer warming up in the corner. The paper fed through slow and deliberate, like it didn't want to hurt me too fast. I didn't look at the report yet. Just the top line. $326, 445.17. That's what it said. That's what I had spent quietly, unceremoniously on a family that forgot I had a chair. Mortgage support for Tessa's third fixer-upper. Medical bills when Reed got denied insurance for that startup-related anxiety. Mom's out-of-pocket dental surgery. Dad's antique watch repair that wasn't urgent, but somehow still got overnighted. Flights, car rentals, party deposits. A honeymoon reschedule after Tessa forgot to book the venue. Even that ridiculous monogrammed champagne cooler from Reed's failed bar launch. The line items blurred after a while. One of them just said, Margot, gift. $2,500. No note. I remembered that one. It was for her birthday. She told me not to bother. Said, just being remembered is enough. And yet, she'd later called me to say the card felt impersonal. I opened the voicemail tab. Just to confirm something I already knew. Camille Mom's voice echoed distant and syrupy. You've always been the reliable one. Your brother's struggling. I told him you'd understand. Another message from Reed. Hey, I know this is last minute, but can you cover the venue? Tessa's card maxed and Dad's being a jerk about boundaries. I'll pay you back next week. That was 3 years ago. There was no next week. And Tessa didn't even ask anymore. She just sent the Venmo request and then a selfie with the caption, couldn't have done it without my people. I wasn't people, I was processing. Elena, I said again. Yes, read me the La Maison category total. She scrolled. $8,457.62 total, she replied. Itemized under event Callahan 50th. My thumb tapped the table twice before I could stop it. It was a tick I picked up in college. Usually when doing mental math. I stared at that number. Then back at the memory of the glass wall. Of my father raising his hand for security, of my mother's unfazed smile. I wasn't on the guest list, but I was on the invoice. Everywhere. Florist. Quartet. Custom menus. Even valet tip envelopes. There was a transaction line for $110 labeled event coat check. I'd never even taken off my coat. I printed the full report. All 73 pages of it. The paper stack looked like a final thesis, only no one would grade it. No one would frame it. No one would say, "We're proud." Elena cleared her throat. "Do you want to do something about this?" She asked it like someone asking if I needed water. Calm. Without judgment. I didn't answer. Not yet. I just placed my palm on the cover page. Felt the warmth of the paper where the ink was still fresh. It was the only warmth in the room. There's a saying I once heard, a giver's fault is assuming others give the same, but I wasn't even angry anymore. I was accounting. This was no longer grief. This was a record. And I was done paying for what couldn't be repaired. When I closed the laptop, the glow faded. The fog outside had lifted slightly. Seattle soft and gray waiting to be seen. I sat in silence for a long time. The kind that doesn't echo. The kind that doesn't need to explain itself. I wasn't cut out of the family, I was built out of it. And now, someone would have to pay attention. No one heard the sound of the decision. Just a mouse click. And silence. It was early, the kind of early where the sky wasn't fully light yet and the city still felt half asleep. Rain tapped against the window in soft, uncertain rhythms. Seattle's version of a whisper. I sat at the kitchen table in the same robe I'd worn for 3 mornings straight. Laptop open, coffee cold. The family ledger spreadsheet glowing back at me in pale blues and grays. Across from me, Elena scrolled through a separate tab. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. We both knew what today was. I moved the mouse slowly. Hovered over the first column. Read, Ecotech drawdown. Total $48,000. I clicked. Funds pulled. Auto notification sent. The sound it made wasn't dramatic. No spark, no crash, just a quiet whoosh. But I felt it in my chest like a screw had finally turned loose. Next column, Florida family trip, deposit paid. $6,500. Click. Cancelled. That one came with a pop-up. Are you sure you want to cancel this reservation? Yes. I was sure 2 years ago. Just didn't admit it. Third line, Caribbean cruise. Anniversary booking. Not for me, of course. It was meant for Mom and Dad. Booked 6 months ago on my birthday, actually. They didn't call that day, but they sent a receipt. I paused. Then opened the details. Change passenger name. Camille Callahan. New itinerary issued. Refund request submitted. Travel credit routed to my account. I didn't need a vacation. But I needed the space. Elena glanced up. You okay? I didn't answer right away. I was watching the confirmation emails stack up. Ping. 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 All those years I'd been invisible. Turns out I was everywhere, just not where it counted. I picked up the phone and tapped my lawyer's contact. He answered on the second ring. Voice clipped. Professional. No small talk. Yes, Miss Callahan, I just need one thing, I said. Can you confirm there were no contracts, no written agreements? A pause. Then, correct. All disbursements were voluntary. Your financial responsibilities ended the moment you chose to end them. I thanked him. Hung up. Another click. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't spite, it was math. At the bottom of the spreadsheet, a note from last year caught my eye. Margot's voice echoed in my head, I just don't want your brother to feel like a burden. He wasn't a burden. He was a black hole. And I was done orbiting. I opened a blank email draft. Typed in all the addresses: Mom, Dad, Reed, Tessa. Subject line: effective immediately, message body. I didn't write much, just enough. Effective immediately, I will no longer provide financial support of any kind. For clarity, this includes, but is not limited to, housing, education, travel, events, bailouts, or gifts. I wish you well. Camille. I read it once, no edits. Then I clicked send. Elena didn't cheer. Didn't smile. She just sat quietly sipping her own coffee, still warm. I looked at mine. Cold now, but steady in my hand. More pings. Refunds arriving. Cancellations confirmed. Line after line, little digital exorcisms. I wasn't deleting them from my life. I was ending the subscriptions. And for the first time in over a decade, my balance sheet was quiet. Elena leaned back. They'll come, she said. I nodded. Let them. Because now I had a record. Receipts. Screenshots. Proof. And more importantly, I had a boundary. The house of cards was built on credit, and I had finally stopped authorizing it. They started banging on my door before 8 a.m. Not one knock. Not two. A full sustained pounding. Like the building was on fire. I didn't rush. I took one last sip of my coffee, now cold. Set the cup down, and opened the door. Margot was in full performance mode, lipstick smudged like she'd been crying even though there were no real tears. Franklin stood behind her, red in the face. Tessa's arms were crossed. And Reed was pacing like he'd lost a bet he couldn't afford to place. They didn't even say hello. The cruise is gone. That was Tessa, voice sharp. Jack and Emma were looking forward to that for months. Camille, Reed cut in. You froze my account. My business account. Without warning, he stepped forward. Do you even understand what you've done? I had payroll this week, Margot chimed in next. I had flowers arranged. A dessert table confirmed. The catering invoice says unpaid now. Do you want us to look like cheapskates? I didn't answer. I just stepped aside and let them in. The same way I always had. They flooded into my living room like it was theirs, still wearing coats. Still tracking rain on my hardwood floor. Not one of them asked to sit, they just took space. Reed grabbed a throw pillow and started pacing again. Tessa opened my fridge like she owned it, then scoffed at the oat milk. Margot pulled off her gloves dramatically and laid them across my clean counter. I watched. Let them go on. Franklin didn't sit. He stood by the fireplace, arms folded, voice like a gavel. You've embarrassed this family. Whatever tantrum you're throwing, this ends today. I walked to the drawer by my desk, took out a manila folder, and handed it to him. He looked down confused. Then flipped it open. $326,445.17. Itemized, color-coded, labeled by year. Medical bills, mortgage gifts. School fees. Bailouts. Deposits. Venues. Even the champagne flute rental for Tessa's baby shower. No one spoke. Then I reached for my phone. Tapped once. Held it up. And let the voice memo play. Franklin's voice, crisp and sure, echoed from the speaker. Get this beggar out of here. He didn't deny it. Margot gasped, more for show than shame. Tessa's mouth dropped open. Reed let out a bitter laugh. You recorded us now, you're spying on your own family. I held the phone still. Just collecting receipts, I said quietly. Franklin tried to hand the folder back. I didn't take it. Margot stepped forward, then voice trembling. We raised you. We gave you a home, you raised me to be useful. I cut in. Not loved, not celebrated, just available. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was thick, like the air after a thunderclap. You didn't remove me from your life, I said slower this time. You just removed the funding. Tessa scoffed. You think this makes you powerful? No, I said. It makes me done. Reed clenched his jaw. I'll see you in court. I nodded. Then I'll bring the receipts. Franklin's eyes narrowed. You'll regret this. I looked at him, and for the first time I didn't feel afraid, not even a little. I already do, I said. But not for the reasons you think. They didn't slam the door when they left. They didn't shout down the hallway. They just walked out like the wind had been knocked out of them. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Naomi. Just a single message, proud of you. They were never your people. A week passed. Then 2. No more calls, no more banging on the door, just silence. The kind that doesn't ask for attention. The kind that lets you breathe. I cleaned the apartment. Really cleaned it. Reed's old mail shredded. The floral deposit contract deleted. The cruise folder archived. I kept one thing though. A small envelope. In it the voice memo. And the spreadsheet printed folded tucked in the back of my drawer under receipts. Not for revenge. Not to reopen wounds. Just to remember. To remind myself that there was a line. And that I finally drew it. Naomi invited me over for dinner that Friday. Just the 2 of us. Takeout Thai. No special occasion. Halfway through pad C, ew, she looked at me and said, "You look lighter." I shrugged. Feels strange, not explaining myself to anyone. She nodded. That's how you know it's peace. Not just quiet. Later that night, I walked home alone. Seattle air had that soft, early summer coolness. A couple passed by holding hands. A busker played something slow on the corner. And I realized I hadn't thought about them all day. Not mom, not dad, not what they'd say, not what they'd want. Just my life, my body, my name, mine.